So the first is Professor Mark Davis from Bentley University, from Massachusetts. And he has authored a number of books in operations management and has worked in the service operations area for many years. And the morning we touched a little bit on the education industry as a service, one of the last areas to change. And in my lunch table, there was a major topic of conversation. Is this industry going to change or not? And we're glad to see that he's going to address that topic front and center.
Thank you very much. Probably the best way to tell you where I come from is a couple of years ago I was invited to participate in a conference on service-oriented computing. And I wrote back and I told the person, I said, thank you very much for the invitation, but I have no idea what service-oriented computing is about. And they said, no, we have plenty of people that know about that. We want you to teach us about service. So my idea is, my background is in service operation, primarily in the B2C environment, okay? And I just want to let you know that's where I'm coming from. I had one follow-up, by the way, to Luke's story this morning about his experiences with the airlines. I had a similar experience where I had to get a ticket from my daughter-in-law to go to her aunt's funeral. And I got online, and I had the same problem. The internet would not work. They wanted her frequent flyer number. She doesn't have a frequent flyer number, and I couldn't get it to work. So I called up an emergency number, and while I was waiting on hold, my session got discontinued because I went too long. So now I called them up, and I said, I need this ticket. They said, Mr. Davis, we'll take care of you right away, but of course I have to charge you $20. And I said, that's not fair, it's not my fault. He said, it doesn't matter. So I needed the ticket, I paid the $20, and then I went back online and wrote an email to Delta Airlines saying, I want my $20 back. 2 days later, to my surprise, I got an email response. I didn't expect anything. Yeah, Mr. Davis, we took a look at your complaint, and we want to let you know we treat all our customers the same. We don't give anybody any reason. Why they wrote that email, I have no idea. Okay? Now I'm really happy, right? So I write them back, and I say, dear Delta Airlines, I teach service operations management, and I'm always looking for companies that use as good examples in my course. Obviously, Delta is not one of them. In those cases where I use companies as examples of poor service, I always give the company the opportunity to reply so that I can include their comments in the class discussion. What would you like me to say? 2 days later, I get another email from Delta Airlines. Mr. Davis, we took another look at your complaint, and we are cheerfully refunding you your $20. The story today is that the power today has shifted to the customer. I think we all have to recognize that. Okay? Excuse me?
Or at least to the professor.
No, everybody. Everybody. I mean, the amount of power because of the internet and the knowledge and the ability to find out information, we have the power as customers. And I tell my students, both as customers you have that power, and as working for companies, recognize your customers have that power. And so one of the things when we talk about building innovation capacity, I try to increase the capacity innovation of my students in the classroom by practicing what I preach. So I just want to go through in the few minutes that I have some of the examples that I use to try to practice what I preach when I say education as a service. Can I read the clip? Two-fisted here, okay. So I want to just talk about 3 of the tools, techniques you want to talk about that I use in my classroom that I've introduced. I talk about service guarantees. An article made famous by Chris Hart in Harvard Business Review. I want to talk about course customization. Everybody talks about customizing things, and I give my students the opportunity to customize the course to a certain extent. And I want to talk lastly about a wiki final exam that I've introduced. So if you look at service guarantees, for service guarantees to work, they're going to be unconditional. FedEx, guaranteed tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, or you get your money back. No discussion, that's it. It's easy to collect, it's easy to invoke, and it's got to be meaningful to the customer. So the first day of class, I say to my students, what are your expectations of me? And they get real shook up about that. No one's ever asked them that. Okay? And then we go ahead and break them up into groups, and they come up with expectations, and then we assign monetary values to those expectations. Okay, and let me just give you some examples of those. So for example, PowerPoint's posted to Blackboard 2 weeks prior to class, which is going to cost me $10. And we can go on. Return case write-ups by the next class, 20 bucks. Feedback on stated intervals on class participation, $50. Okay? They're uncomfortable with this. No one's ever done this with them. Who's paying for this money? I said, I am, out of my own pocket. They say, that's not fair. I said, I'm willing to do that. Okay? And if you'll notice, in this case, I'm going to show you another case in the situation. In this case, these are all process issues. These are all issues in which I have total control over. And I'll tell you, service guarantees work. I really focus when I realize that if I don't do certain things, it's going to cost me money. Now, some of these are on a per class basis, some of these are on an individual basis. Okay? And so what we do is people say, what do you do with the money? Well, I give the students a choice. At the end of the semester, we can all go out for a drink, and it's on me, or I can donate it to a scholarship fund that I started at Bentley University in memory of one of my former students. Every time you've always said give it to the scholarship fund, which I usually give to anyway, so it's really not costing me anything. Okay? But they really pay attention to this, and they make me pay attention. I'll tell you just one quick story. I was out of town at a conference, and I come back the next week, and I give back case write-ups, and the student says to me, you owe us 10 bucks a piece. In this case, 20, it was 10 bucks on the other one. They were all negotiable. You owe us 10 bucks a piece. I said, wait a minute, you turned it by this way. I wasn't here last week. It's unconditional, you said. It doesn't matter whether you were here or not last week. These cases were due back in the classroom last week. And I said, you know, you're right. And so that cost me, I think it was 70 bucks. Yeah? But that's part of the fun of doing it, okay? Now, this was at Bentley, and then I taught at IE Business School, a little bit different, okay? Here's their expectations. What's interesting, if you look at the Bentley, it's all process-oriented. Here, it's all content. It's all about content for the most part. And one of the big discussions when you have in terms of deciding on these, okay, is how do you judge? How do you judge whether or not you had fun in the class? How do you judge whether or not covered sufficient best practices? Okay, those are things students get, I don't know, but we want you to do that. And so basically the way we do it, in this case, is I leave the room. They vote on every one of those majority rules, okay? In this particular situation, I think I hit the mark 4 out of 6 times. I missed it on 2, cost me 1 beer apiece. More than happy to buy the kids that, okay? Grading criteria. Because we have Excel today, I give the students a choice of how they want their grade determined. So every student can pick between these ranges, all right, of how their grade to be made up. Ahead of time, it has to be done in the first week of class. They can't do it afterwards, okay? And the other criteria says it's got to equal 100. That seems obvious to us. You don't believe how many times it comes up to 105, 110. I have to go back and check the math, okay? But again, they're participating in co-creation of value, okay? And they like that. And the last thing I talk about is a wiki final. Okay, I have this, it makes my life a lot easier. I don't have to come up with a new final exam every time. I have the students develop the final. Every student has to submit 5 questions on 5 different topics during the semester in which they get graded, along with answers to those questions, okay? In addition, okay, they have to comment on other people's questions and answers and whether they're right or wrong. I do nothing in terms of participation. I don't say they're good, bad, or otherwise, okay? At the end of the course, I take a subset of these questions and I ask for a poetic license or professorial license to make them a little shorter. So some of these kids ask questions that run 2 pages, okay? And that becomes their exam. And so I have colleagues that get very upset. But if you gave them all the questions and they know all the answers, isn't everybody going to get 100? No. Okay? So for example, you have 25 kids in the class, you have 5 questions, it's 125 questions. If they've memorized and learned all those 125 questions, they deserve 100. Most people don't. I take usually like 10 questions out of the 125. Okay? I have other games, exercises, and things I'm more than happy to share with anybody if they want me on unlimited time. And so I just wanted to keep it to that. Thank you.